Hello, I'm William Sanchez, and this is the Philosophical Rebellion Substack. Today I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about The Stories They Don't Want You to Know, which is my new book available on Amazon. The first major section of my book is on the history of American socialism. Socialism in America really gets its definition from Harry Truman, who said that socialism is a scare word. When he said that, he was referencing FDR's New Deal reforms and the history of the American labor movement, which worked decades to increase the economic welfare of those in the bottom 99% of America at the expense of the elites. And even more important than the specific policies that he was referencing, it is the entire economic ideology of valuing labor more than capital and valuing the interests of the working class more than those of the elites that Harry Truman was really referencing as socialism. So what has happened over the past several decades is that the economic interests of the 1% have been inaccurately represented as just pure good old-fashioned capitalism, whereas the economic interests of the working class have been smeared and propagandized to be labeled as radical socialism. So if you are a member of the working class in America today, your economic interests are represented by the radical socialism of Bernie Sanders. And if you truly want to make America great again, we need a Bernie Sanders-inspired economic renaissance. That type of economic renaissance would mean America returning to the economic values of Theodore Roosevelt's New Nationalism, in which he advocated for breaking up monopolies, unionization of the working class, a living wage as the minimum wage. And most importantly, Theodore Roosevelt advocated for ending the political activity of corporations, saying that to end the unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics was the main task for the politicians of his day. But now, over 100 years later, Bernie Sanders represents the economic ideology of Theodore Roosevelt, and of FDR, and of Harry Truman, and of Martin Luther King Jr. But something happened in the 1960s which was horrible for the labor movement. And that was the assassination of some of the most important labor leaders, like Martin Luther King Jr. and JFK and RFK. Then, after the assassinations of those leaders, the labor movement was left in disarray. But the economic elites purchased many American politicians to push the false narrative that greed is good trickle-down is actually the only way to do capitalism. That form of capitalism is horribly corrupt, and it is not a good economic ideology. But it has been dominant in America for the past 50 years, resulting in an enormous upwards redistribution of wealth away from the working class to the 1%. So that means the average full-time worker in America now makes about $42,000 less than they would have with the 1970s level of economic inequality, just because now CEOs and shareholders of America's largest corporations make a much larger amount compared to their workforce. So this is a quote from page 57 of my new book. The elites have been in the driver's seat of the US economy for at least 50 years. Ending the era of trickle-down economics in our policy and our culture is one of the most important challenges we face in America today. Bernie is using the very best values and policy proposals from the most successful pro-labor periods of American history. Bernie gets a lot of criticism for representing radical socialism, but Bernie's radical socialism is made in America. Bernie's economic ideology is as American as it gets. And there are a few policy proposals from Bernie Sanders which I reference in my book. One of them is raising the minimum wage to $17 an hour, so that it is truly a gainful employment minimum wage. The next proposal is Bernie Sanders' idea to save Social Security. The debate is between Republicans who want to raise the retirement age and decrease benefits, versus Bernie Sanders, who wants to increase benefits and fully fund the program for the next 75 years, all by making billionaires and the 1% pay an equal tax rate to the rest of America, where right now the elites are exempted from Social Security taxes after the first $160,000 of their income. All Bernie Sanders wants to do to fully fund the program is to end the regressive tax rate and create a flat tax. Then Bernie Sanders' next proposal is to create a Medicare for all system. And that is because Americans are being taken advantage of by greedy corporations who are currently price gouging the American people for healthcare. So we need vertical integration of hospitals, drug manufacturers, educational institutions, pharmaceutical equipment manufacturers, medical researchers, and healthcare advocates to completely cut out the greedy middlemen that are currently corrupting the American healthcare system. And if you want to talk about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, there's no more important place to look than the United States military. The Pentagon has failed the last 6 audits in a row, only able to account for about 2/3 of their budget. And every single year, the military budget continues increasing by billions and billions of dollars. And with the money that our Pentagon can keep track of, they are paying hundreds, if not thousands of times the cost of goods to buy them from defense contractors who are pocketing the extra money. But before our government will even be willing to deal with any of those issues, we need to end the financial corruption of our political system. That means finally bringing about Theodore Roosevelt's goal to end the political activity of corporations. And that goal could be accomplished through Bernie Sanders' Saving American Democracy constitutional amendment, which would make clear that corporations are not humans and are not entitled to human rights under our Constitution. And that's what radical socialism in America is really about today. Creating good economic policy that benefits the vast majority of the American people at the expense of the economic elites and the big businesses that control our government and corrupt it to their own ends. So remember, radical socialism is truly working class capitalism. And the type of government corrupting, greed is good, trickle-down economics that America currently practices is a horribly corrupted form of Adam Smith's economic ideology. So the debate between socialism versus capitalism is actually better represented and more accurately framed as the interests of the working class versus the interests of the elites. So, if you want to get my full perspective on the history of American socialism and the actual economic ideology which represents the interests of the working class, check out my new book, The Stories They Don't Want You to Know, available on Amazon.